Controlling our eyesight is mandatory. Allah commands it in the Quran for both men and for women. And in fact, for those who do not control their eyesight, there awaits for them punishments in this dunya and in the akhirah. The Prophet ﷺ has told the Sahaba, he told Ali radiallahu anhu, that do not follow one glance with a second, because it is not allowed for you to look at something that's haram or someone that you're not supposed to be looking at for a second time, unless of course it's for a need, for a necessity, for if you work in security, if you need to recognize someone. But as for continuously glaring and gazing and staring for shahwa, for desire, enjoying for no reason, that's completely haram, unless of course this person is your spouse. This problem of gazing and looking at haram things, it's a widespread problem, both in Muslim societies and in non-Muslim societies even more. One of the biggest industries nowadays, of course, adult film industry. Pornography, people are watching these things as if it's not even a problem. This society doesn't even condemn it anymore. It's just one of those things that people do when they're growing up. It's just looked upon like that. It's not a big deal. Whereas, not controlling our eyesight is opening them to Jahannam. Look, ulama explain that when you look at something haram, then that thought enters your mind. The thought then processes and becomes an intention. That then becomes an action. And so therefore, if you can control the eyesight from the origin, then you have controlled the problem totally. Allah says in the Quran, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا. Don't even come close to anything that's in the form of zina. And the zina, as you know, comes in various forms. There is of course the zina itself of illegitimate intercourse, but of course there is a zina of the eyes. The Prophet ﷺ has explained that if your eyes are looking at haram things, then your eyes are committing zina. If your ears are listening to haram things, then your ears are committing zina. And if your hand is touching something that's haram, it's also committing zina. And so therefore, when we allow for our eyesight to glare and gaze uncontrolled gazes, this is very dangerous. The Prophet ﷺ has called this a arrow of Iblees, which is poisoned. The reason why it's poisoned is because an eyesight or the gaze itself doesn't just constitute one sin. Right? If you do one sin, it's one sin. But the eyesight itself is such that when you allow for yourself to look at haram, then it has an effect on our hearts that destroys it completely. It poisons our heart, and so it has an effect on your complete iman. It has an effect on your salah. It has an effect on your khushu'. It has an effect on your connection to Allah Azza wa Jal. It has an effect on how you behave as a Muslim throughout the rest of the day or throughout the rest of your life. And so therefore, controlling the gaze is absolutely mandatory. It's wajib, it's fard. Allah says, tell the believing servants, believing men, believing women. Prophet ﷺ found one of the Sahaba who was looking in the wrong direction on one occasion. He literally moved his face away, showing that this is completely haram, not allowed. And so it is very important for us to remember this lesson, because our hearts will be damaged. And in fact, this heart being damaged is going to have a significant effect on our salah, like we've said before, and it will damage our ibadat by and large. The Prophet ﷺ has told us that don't sit around in the paths or in the ways or in the marketplaces for no reason. It's very normal now, you know, with the hot weather and the lockdown being eased, people are sitting around in street corners. But the Prophet ﷺ has said that you should try to avoid sitting on the streets and in the corners of the streets. But if you have to sit for some reason, because you need to see someone or because you're waiting for someone, then you must maintain and fulfill the rights of the street. If you must sit on the streets or on the ways or on the benches or in the parks and these open places, then you must fulfill the rights of these places. What are they? First of them is for you to lower your gaze. And this lowering of the gaze is not just for men, just for men, it's for women also. The Prophet ﷺ has told the Sahabiyat that they should also lower their gazes. He said that they should stay aback in the masajid and they should not raise their heads if the men are going to ruku' or sujood. These are all from the prophetic instruction, and these are in line with, this is in line with the Islamic principle of protection is better than cure. Protection is better than cure. It's easier to protect ourselves from the illness if you prevent ourselves initially. Whereas Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah and so many ulama, they say that one person who sacrifices that sight, that glance, he gains more than he loses. And in fact, that one loss, that one damage of looking in the haram direction or looking at haram has so many more harms inside it. Like we've said, it becomes an intention, an action, damages your iman, damages your faith, damages your khushu', damages your focus in salah, damages all of these things. And so therefore, it is absolutely important for all of us, men, women, young and old. Let's not assume there's only young people. There are many old people who look at things that they should not be looking at. And in fact, looking at haram affects your households. Doesn't just affect your iman, your own iman. It affects your ibadah, of course, and your households. It affects your relationships. It affects the marital relationships. So many people are not content with their wives, not content with their husbands, because they're too busy looking at wrong or things or people they should not be looking at in the first place. Comparing their wife to another woman, comparing their husband to another man that they've seen on Instagram or on Twitter or any other magazine or a film. And so controlling your gaze is so important. It is through these eyesights that our iman is completely dead. And it is the closest or the quickest route to our heart is through our eyes. The quickest route to our heart is through our eyes. And so if we can control our eyes, we've protected our heart. Imam al-Shafi'i can't memorize, or he had a slight weakness in his memory for just one day, for a few moments. And so he explains to his teacher, I cannot memorize properly today. He says that perhaps you've sinned, because sinning damages your memory, and your heart and your mind combined together is the source of your memory. And the ilm is nur of Allah. The ilm, the knowledge of Allah, the ilmul wahi, this is not ABCD, just general, any other information or worldly information. This is ilmul wahi, the knowledge of Allah's divine revelation, the Quran, the Sunnah. For you to be able to store this, you must have a pure and clean heart. And so for those who have damaged their hearts with haram, with wrongs, with sinning, with not controlling our gazes, with not controlling our ears, then ilm reaching there and staying there will be very, very difficult, because he explains, وَنُورُ اللَّهِ لَا يُعْطَاهُ عَاصِي, that a sinner will not be able to receive the nur of Allah Azza wa Jal. Affects your ibadah, affects your knowledge, affects your memory, affects your household, affects the entire society. And so therefore, we should and we must try and correct this illness, this problem, this error of ours. We must try and control and correct this sin.